this Pesach is going to be different than all other Pesachim that we've celebrated. So when we'll ask, why is this night different from all other nights? Well, it's going to be profoundly different because all other experiences of Pesach, we usually have our family around us, our children, our grandchildren, our in-laws, and this year, because of the coronavirus and this epidemic, we have to be isolated, and it's extremely important that everybody observe all the health regulations that have been have been laid out for everybody. No minyanim, no private minyanim, social distancing, and so on. So I thought it would be appropriate to speak about a Rambam and a Gemara that teaches us and tells us about the experience of celebrating the Seder alone. The Rambam in Perek Zayin from Hilchos Chomer to Matzah says, "V'tzorach laso shinu b'layla hazeh kidei shiyiru habonim v'yishlu v'yomu ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelos." That on this night you have to do things to make it a little different, to pique children's interest, so that they should ask, why is this night different from all other nights? Till you able to respond to them. This is what we experience. Einlo ben, if he doesn't have a son to ask the manashtano, so the Ram says, Ishto sholoso. If he's alone, doesn't have a son with him, so his wife asks. Einlo isha, if he's alone and his wife is not with him, sholom zeh et zeh, manashtana halayla zeh. Vafil kulam chachamim. If he just has another colleague with him or other colleagues, so then they ask him, and they ask each other, why is this night different? Manashtana. Haya levado, what if he's experiencing the Seder completely alone? So the Ram says, Shol la'atzmo, manashtana halayla zeh. So then he asks himself the fear kashas. Why is this night different from all other nights? So the mocha of this Rambam is a Mechilta. The Mechilta says, "Ainli ela bezman sheyesh lo ben, beino leven atzmo, beino leven achayim inayim." What if he's alone? How do you know that they still have to ask? So the Mechilta learns it from a pasuk, "Vayom Moshe el ha'am zachor es hayom asher yatzas miMitzrayim." And this is also a Gemara in Pesachim and Daf Tesayin. It says, "Tana abanim chacham beno shoalo." A chacham, his son, asks him, "Vim eno chacham, ishto sholaso." If his son doesn't know the manashtana, then his wife asks, "Vim lav hu shola atzmo." But if not, then he asks himself, "Vafil shnei tamid chachamim sheyodim b'hilchos haPesach sholem zelazeh." And if it's two people having a seder together, two chachamim, each one asks the other. So one could query, you could be mistapic, what if he doesn't have a son to ask present? So who comes first? Is it his wife? Is that preferable? Or is it preferable that Chavero should ask, his colleague? So from the Lashon of the Rambam, it would seem that Ishto, his wife, comes first, because the Rambam says, the im elo isha sholem zeh et zeh. But it sounds that if his wife is present and is there, that his wife is preferable to his colleague. However, from the Chayei Adam, the way he quotes the halacha, the Chayei Adam says, im ein sham tino yishol beno o chavero o afilo ishto. So from the line for afilo ishto, it seems that Chavero is kodem leishto. So I'm going to talk about what this revolves around. So I heard from the Rav, and the Rav has this in one of his yortzites here. He has a fundamental principle about the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because the Mishnah says in Pesachim, V'doresh me'arami ovid avi ashiyigma kol ha'parsha kula. That in terms of the mitzvah of Sipit Tzrayim, you're doirish, you interpret the entire parsha of Arami Ovid Avi, which is the parsha of Mikra Bikurim. And the Rambam codifies that as well in Perek Zayin Hilchos Chametz Matzah. He says, "V'hu sheyidrosh mi'arami Ovid Avi ad sheyigma kol ha'parsha v'chol ha'mosif u'marech b'drash parsha zu harezeh meshubach." The Rambam says that we interpret the entire parsha, which is in fact the core text of the haGadol, and the Rambam says, and he who we know that the Rambam seems to relate that specifically the Chol Hamabe B'Drash Parsha Zu in terms of interpreting this parsha. That's praiseworthy. So, I mean, of course, what's strange is this: why is it that the core text is Arami Ovid Avi? I mean, we would have thought if you're writing the haGadol, there are explicit parshas in the Torah, Bereshis, Va'era, Bo, B'Shalach, that relates explicitly to the story of the Exodus. Why did we take an obscure parsha in Sefer Dvarim when we have the whole slew of parshas at the beginning of Sefer Shmos that deal with the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim? We would think that that's the more appropriate parshas to have chosen. So the Rav explained that the reason we don't is because the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. It's fulfilled through the medium of Talmud Torah. And therefore, actually, the Rav said the Geonim asked this question: why is it that Arami Ovid Avi is chosen? So the answer is because we choose not the explicit parsha, but one that we have to interpret through the midah shel Torah and the Drasha behem, through the instrumentality of Torah Sheb'al Peh, and elucidate it and interpret it. And therefore, we choose not the explicit parsha, but the parsha of Arami Ovid Avi. And it's clear, the Rav said, that the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias is a mitzvah of Talmud Torah, because we see that from the answer to the Ben Chacham. To the Ben Chacham would say, "V'af ata emelo ki hilchas haPesach im aftirin achar haPesach afikomin." That it's not, we don't just tell them the story of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus, but we tell them hilchas haPesach. So studying the laws of Pesach itself is part of the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias. And the Vilna Gaon was of the opinion, interpreting Af Ata Emelo Ki Hilchas HaPesach, that it doesn't mean only to teach him the laws of just this law, Ein Maftinach HaPesach Afikomen, but it means Af Ata Emelo Ki Hilchas HaPesach. It means Ein Maftin Achra Pesach Afikomen, means till the end of this, from Aleph bis Tov, from the beginning to the end. So all Hilchas HaPesach are integrated into the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias. And this is explicit in the Tosefta, which is quoted by the Hagos Maimoni at the end of Hilchas Chametz Matzah. The Tosefta says, Chayiv Odom Lasov beHilchas HaPesach Afilu Beino Leven Atzmo, Beino Leven Beiso, Beino Leven Talmido. That it's a mitzvah to a person, indeed an obligation to study the laws of Pesach. Afilu Beino Leven Atzmo, even he himself. Ma'aseh Gamliel v'Chachamim shahayu b'beis Baisus ben Zunin. There was once a story about Rabbi Gamliel and his colleagues, Chachamim, who in the house of Baisus ben Zunin, v'hayu oskim behilchas haPesach, kol halayla at kros hageva, that they learned the laws of Pesach the entire night till the cock crowed. Higbiu milfneim v'noadim v'halchu beis hamedrash, and from there they went to continue their learning in the beis hamedrash. So you see that studying the Hilchos HaPesach is also integrated into the mitzvah of Siprit Yisrael. And therefore, the Rav said, we make a special bracha on this kiyum of Talmud Torah related to Siprit Yisrael, and that bracha is the Baruch HaMokom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenasan Torah L'Am Baruch Hu. So that's a special Birkas HaTorah that we find integrated into the haGadol, the text of the haGadol, on the special mitzvah of Siprit Yisrael. So I would add to what the Rav said, now that we see that the Siprit Yisrael represents a special mitzvah of Talmud Torah, we prefer that fulfillment comes through the halachas of Torah Shebi'al Peh, because on Torah Shebiksav, there's no Masorah. The Torah Shebiksav, the written law, or the written text, the scripture itself, that's Torah Shebiksav. You don't need a Masorah on that, because it's Biksav. It's written down. The Masorah, the tradition of passing it on, that's on Torah Shebi'al Peh. And therefore, since the night of Siprit Yisrael is the night of Masorah, the night of V'Yigadat L'Bincha, of telling over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and indeed we see the halachas of Yetzias Mitzrayim, to each person, to each child, based on his ability, his capacity, his orientation, whether it's a chacham, a tam, a rasha, any day lisho, but to everybody who's at the Seder. So we want it to be through Torah Shebi'al Peh, because on Torah Shebi'al Peh is Chaladin Masorah, as opposed to Torah Shebiksav. Now, when he's at the Seder by himself, it says, Shoel es atzmo. And of course, it's a little, that needs some interpretation. What does it mean? He asks himself. I mean, how is he having this conversation with himself? But actually, we find in Talmud Torah that possibility as well. Because the Rambam says in Perek Aleph from Hilchos Talmud Torah, he says, Keshem shemitzvah olav lilmod es beno, kachu mitzvah lelamed atzmo. That just as he's obligated to teach his son, so is he obligated to teach himself. So the Ram doesn't say, just as he's obligated to teach his son, so he's also obligated to learn himself. And also, by the way, the order is strange. One would think first he's obligated to learn himself so that he knows something, what to give over, and then he would teach his son. No, the Rambam begins with an obligation first to teach your son, and then he says, and also you have to teach yourself. And he doesn't say you have to study yourself. You have to teach yourself, because the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is always a mitzvah of Masorah, of teaching to others, passing on the Masorah. And indeed, even in the reflexive, if he hasn't had anybody who taught him, he himself is obligated to learn and to teach, not to learn, but to teach himself. So therefore we understand, in terms of Shoel es Atzmo, because we find that concept as relates to Talmud Torah, that Shoel es Atzmo is because by Talmud Torah also, Chayv L'Lamed is Atzmo. And therefore it would seem that if he had his grandson at the Seder, his grandson would take precedence over other people, Ishto or others, because for a grandson, there's also a mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of a grandfather to give over the Masorah to teach to his grandson, as the Rambam paskins in the beginning of Hilchos Talmud Torah, Keshem shechayv adon l'lamed es beno, kachu chayv l'lamed es ben beno, shenema vodatim l'vanecha v'nei banecha. Just as he's obligated to teach his son, he's also obligated to teach his grandson. And just a parallel to this, about the mitzvah of Siprit Mitzrayim, we find also in the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. Because Kriya Shema, I heard this in the Rav many times, he said the mitzvah of Kriya Shema also, while it's an independent mitzvah, v'dibata bam, in the Taryag mitzvahs, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, but it's also fulfilled and linked to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And this we can see from the Yerushalmi, because the Yerushalmi says that a person who's Toraso Umnaso, who's completely engaged in Torah, like Reb Shuni B'chai v'chaveros, that he's exempt from Kriyishma, because the Yerushalmi says the high shinun v'high shinun, that both of them are learning. So therefore, since Kriyishma also represents a special kiyum of Talmud Torah, which is when he's engaged in Kriyishma, and therefore the person who's Torasum Naso has a special status as relates to Kriyishma. And this to prove that Kriyishma is a special mitzvah of Talmud Torah from the fact that Ava Rabbah is transformed into a Birkas HaTorah. Because Ava Rabbah, if a person didn't say the Birkas Torah in the morning, if he's not sure if he said it, he can fulfill that Birkas HaTorah, the Gemara says, by saying Ava Rabbah. Because Ava Rabbah is a special mitzvah, a special bracha, excuse me, and the unique mitzvah of Talmud Torah that's integral into the mitzvah of Kriyishma. And I just want to show this link between the mitzvah of Kriyishma and the mitzvah of Siprit Mitzrayim, because we know that the mitzvah of Siprit Mitzrayim is a mitzvah of Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shamayim, accepting the unity and God's dominion over the world. Because it's often easier to accept God's dominion over the world than to accept God's dominion over each of us individually, ourselves. But the Brisa in Brachas and Daf Yudaled says, Tani Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Bedinhu sheyakdim shma levahayim shemoa. Says Zel Lilmo v'Zel Lamed, that Shema comes to before V'hayim Shemoa because it has these essential ingredients. And Rashi says Lilmod v'Dibarta ban v'Zel Lamed u'Lamadta Masamis Menachem v'Im lo Lamod Tchila Heichi Lamed Espanov. So we see from Rashi that he says that the mitzvah, that the V'Dibarta ban, which is referring also to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So it's both the mitzvah, it's the source for the mitzvah d'oraisa of saying Kriyishma, but it's also the source for Talmud Torah. So we see that Talmud Torah and Kriyishma are integrated one in the other. And this is undoubtedly what the Gemara says in the first parak in Nedarim, that the Gemara says, how does one fulfill the mitzvah of Hagisa Bo Yom Valayla? That he reads, the Gemara says, the Hakori Kriyishma Pamayim Baboka Ba'erev, if he reads Kriyishma twice a day, namely in the morning and at night, so that's the minimal, that's considered V'Hagisa Bo Yom Valayla, that you've been involved, engaged in Torah day and night. So we see that Kriyishma is a fulfillment, a special fulfillment of the mitzvah of Kriyishma, and with that, on a minimal basis, one fulfills V'Hagisa Bo Yom Valayla. So if you look in the Rambam, in Perak Aleph, Halacha Beis of Kriyishma, the Rambam says, Umaktinun likros parsha Shema, v'bnei sheyesh ba yichud Hashem, v'havaso v'talmudo, shehu ha'ikil haGadol shakol tolibo. That the first parsha of Shema takes precedence. That comes first because it has these three critical elements, the Rambam says, Yichud Hashem, Avaso, v'talmudo, accepting God's unity, his singularity, Avaso, a love of Hashem, v'yahavta, v'talmudo, Shehu ha'iko haGadol she'akol Torah, and Talmud Torah, and this is the great principle that everything else is dependent on. And what the Rambam seems to be saying is that it has to be, in other words, without Talmud Torah, without the study of Torah, it's impossible to have Kabbalah Samach Shemayim, because it's only through Torah that we know about God. And through Torah, we glimpse the infinite mind of Kadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, that's an essential ingredient in Kabbalah's Olmach Shemayim. And it's interesting, the Rambam's opinion is that all three parshas of Shema are D'Oraisa. The Ramban's opinion is that only the first pasuk is D'Oraisa. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Rashi seems to say the first parsha, but the Rambam says that all three parshas are D'Oraisa. Now the Rambam is somewhat difficult because the Gemara seems to be explicit. The Gemara has a discussion in Brachos. Why do they choose the parsha of Tzitzis for the third parsha of Shema? And the Gemara gives different suggestions. Why didn't they choose the parsha of Mishkolos or other parshas that could have been chosen for the last parsha? According to the Rambam says that this is Kriya Shema, V'zu Kriya Shema, seems that all three parshas are D'Oraisa. That's what Reb Chaim assumed. So how could the Gemara have a suggestion? Why did they choose this parsha? Why not another parsha? But according, but the Rav quoted Reb Chaim as answering that the Rambam thinks that it could have been a different parsha, but it had to be a parsha of that included the theme of Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim. And in fact, the Reb Chaim answered, they ask on the Rambam, the Shagas Ari ask, others ask, how come the Rambam doesn't mention the minyan of mitzvahs? We don't find the Rambam counting a mitzvah of Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, to remember the Yitzias Mitzrayim. So Reb Chaim answered that apparently the Rambam doesn't count it because he subsumes it under the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. It's not an independent mitzvah. It's part of the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. It's a prat within Kriya Shema. And therefore, since he counts Kriya Shema, subsumed under that is Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim. But why indeed is Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim an essential ingredient for, according to the Rambam, for Kriya Shema? Because Kriya Shema, when we affirm our belief in God, we believe in a God not only who's distant, who created the world, the prime mover, and then is not engaged or involved anymore. We believe in a God who's intimately involved in the world, in human affairs, and most especially through Am Yisrael, through his chosen people. So therefore, we mention Schiras Yitzias Mitzrayim because that's the theme of Yitzias Mitzrayim, that God is involved with the Jewish people and with all mankind, and indeed the entire creation. It's interesting, if you look in the Rambam counts Anochi Hashem Elokecha as one of the Taryag mitzvahs. The Ramban disagrees. The Ramban says Anochi can't be counted as a mitzvah because it's just the foundation of all mitzvahs. If you don't believe in God, who is the mitzvah, the commander, who is the divine legislator, then you can't. That's the principle or the foundation of all mitzvahs. But it itself is not counted as a mitzvah. However, the Rambam in Yesod Torah does count it, and the Rambam says Yesod HaYesodos or Omid HaChachmos, the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all knowledge, Leida Sheyesha Motzi Richon, that know that there's a creator for whom Mamtzi Kol Nimtza, and he is the creator of everything. And then the Rambam says, V'dias Dovazeh Mitzvahs Aseh, and the knowledge of that is a Mitzvahs Aseh, Shenema Anochi Hashem Elokecha, V'chol Hamala El Daito Sheyesh Eloka Acha Chutz Mizeh, over below Aseh, Shenema Lo Yelach Elokim Achim Al Panai. And if a person denies that he is the sole creator and the sole divine force, that he violates Lo Yilacha, V'kofa Be'iko, and he denies this great principle, he's an apostate. Suzehu, the Ram says, Ha'iko haGadol she'akol toloi bo, because this is the great principle that everything depends on. So this language of haGadol should be reminiscent to you, because that's what the Rambam said also by Kriya Shema, that the reason that the first parsha comes first, because it has Yichudu v'avaso v'talmudo shehu ha'ikar haGadol she'akol tolibo. And therefore, that mitzvah of Kriya Shema is linked to Anochi, because it is an affirmation. It's also Kabbal's Ol Malchut Shamayim. And it's interesting. What is Anochi? Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzotzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Because that's the great principle of our faith. An intimate relationship that everybody can have with Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what we affirm the night of the Seder. And in that intimate relationship comes to the fore, not only the night of the Seder and Kriya Shema, but through study of Torah. And that's why it comes specifically with the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Now, this year is a very difficult year for us, but our belief in Kadosh Baruch Hu, Anochi, Asher Tzeitzich Mitzrayim, we know that the Jewish people, in many, many difficult circumstances, throughout our history, Kadosh Baruch Hu has been there. Shev'chol dor v'dor omdim aleinu l'chalosenu. But there always is HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam. Now we're confronted by this virus. And all of us have to have a Seder, to a certain degree in isolation without our children, our grandchildren, our parents. It's a difficult time. But Gam Zeh Ya'avor. And Kadosh Baruch Hu will always be with us. He's always with us to comfort us. I once mentioned at Shul, and remarkably, Seth Finkelstein told me that it was his teacher when I was in Yeshiva Central Queens. I had a teacher, wonderful Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Pfeiffer. And he told the story about how he he had a Seder in the most difficult of circumstances in the Warsaw Ghetto. His wife and family were killed, and he rebuilt his family. And so we're not living through what happened in 1940. But things will change and things will get better. Abraham Lincoln in 1859, he spoke, and it was a very difficult time. This was in the prelude to the Civil War. In an address to the Wisconsin State Agriculture, it is said an Eastern monarch once charged his wise men to invent him a sentence to be ever in view and which should be true and appropriate in all times and situations. They presented him with the words, "And this too shall pass away." How much it expresses, how chastening in the hour of pride, how consoling in the depths of affliction. V'gam zeh ya'avor. My son Yitzi today spoke, and he's mentioned that in Parshas, this past Shabbos, we ensure we would have read Parshas Tzav, Shabbos haGadol, and the mitzvah of the beginning of Tzav tells us that there's a mitzvah that the light on the Mizbeach should never go out. And that's Laziras, this is mentioned specifically to be Mizaris, the Kohanim, that at night, when no one is around, in pitch darkness, the Kohen should always know that that's his obligation to make sure that the light of the Mizbeach doesn't go out. So even in darkness, the flame of the Mizbeach is still with us. And that's what we know, that even in dark times and difficult times, Kadosh Baruch Hu is with us. And therefore, and the Torah is always with us. So even if we're completely alone, Shoel es Atzmo, he asks the questions to himself, because while he may seem completely alone, he's not really completely alone. The Shekhinah is with him. Kadosh Baruch Hu is with him. And next year, Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year with our children and grandchildren, we'll celebrate with the Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach especially is a halacha that we celebrate with family. It requires chabura. and we know things are going to get better. So my wishes to you is that it should be, even in this difficult time, in this lonely time, a chag kosher v'sameach. You should have nachas from your children, and we should hopefully be able to celebrate together in our minyanim, in our shuls. It may take a while. This is not evaporating in the next few weeks, but in time, it will change, and we'll all be together again. Chag Sameach.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi, very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.